December 18th, 2017 for our regular council meeting. Council started off with a closed session at 6:30 p.m. So we're now opening the regular meeting. Council, staff, are there any additional items? I was going to go to staff first, actually. Go ahead, Brianna.
Yes, I have a downtown snow removal reminder.
Okay.
Thank you, Worship. Just the 2018 Memory Lane calendar.
Good, thank you. Councillor Kepke.
Getting Ahead program.
Oh, good. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Worship. I have two items, City Hall renovation update and OPP costing, and with your permission, I'll do the OPP costing under 10A when we deal with the letter from the board.
Okay. Councillor Dodd. Councillor Lemon.
I have two items about the city of Owen Sound.
That narrows it. Good. And
Pecuniary interest.
I'll have one annual wrap-up. Oh, Scott? No? Okay.
I missed them.
Ms. Allen?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a report that came in late today.
Well, that's too bad. We'll have to put it off to January. Okay. We doing that as other business then? Yeah, okay. Number 4 on our agenda, disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none. Number 5 is confirmation of minutes.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that the minutes of the special council meeting held on December 1, 2017 as printed be adopted.
All in favor? That is carried.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on December 4, 2017 as printed be adopted.
All in favor? That is carried.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that the minutes of the public meeting held on December 4, 2017 as printed be adopted.
And all in favor? And that one is carried. That's it. Number 6 is the resolution.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that City Council now go into committee of the whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
And all in favor? And that is carried. So down to number 7, there are no public meetings. And number 8, deputations. It says Mayor Boddy, but it's actually going to be Councillor Dodd, and I'm going to assist him. So we're going to go down to the other podium and play through.
Great, thank you. So the facade and structural improvement program was approved originally by City Council in 2000. The program provides for incentives to property owners and tenants who improve the facade of a building and or complete structural improvements necessary to maintain the safety and integrity of their building. The guidelines also encourage the restoration of the original facade appearance in the downtown and revitalization and improvement of the rear facade of buildings. The program is also intended to help heritage properties that are designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. Tonight, we are recognizing 5 facade grant recipients for the outstanding improvements made to their buildings in the downtown. First, we're with Dr. Everett Hall. Dr. Everett Hall is here this evening to receive a facade grant for his property located at 832-840 2nd Avenue East, just north of City Hall. This building is unique in that it fronts onto 2nd Avenue East, the Percy England Parkette located adjacent to City Hall, and also faces 1st Avenue East and the Sydenham River. Dr. Hall has demonstrated an ongoing commitment to preserving and maintaining this highly visible building. Previous facade grants have been given to repair and repoint brickwork on the front and side facade and replace windows. Tonight, a facade grant is being given to assist with replacing caps on the low roof on the south side of the building above the Golden Shear storefront, repair walls on the inside of the parapet, repair chimney on the rear facade, and remove orange paint from the rear brick facade and repair and seal with a breathable sealer. The before and after photographs clearly illustrate the improvement that this has been made to the facade. The facade guidelines strongly encourage downtown property owners to improve these rear facades that are often used for deliveries and parking and often not beautified like front facades. Dr. Hall, the improvement to this rear facade is remarkable. Thank you for your ongoing commitment to maintaining your building in the city's downtown.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is my third time here. We have, with this building, of course, it had 3 facades exposed to the public viewing, and I'm not sure how old this building is, but I'm assuming it was built in the 1800s. This last one we did is probably the most dramatic because we got rid of all that ugly paint and all that strapping on the back and closed off that chimney, which was non-functional. So the end result is we have a building that Marilyn and I are proud of. We hope it looks as good as it did the day it was built. We have the downtown community living location is in this building, a hairdressing shop and Trophies 2 as well. We have put in 4 residential units on the second floor, which we find very easy to rent because there is parking there and they like the look of the building. So I would like to thank the city staff, Kim Wepler and her group. They're always very helpful in keeping me organized and doing these projects. And certainly I'd like to thank City Council for continuing to support this program. Certainly with their encouragement and the financial help, it let us do this work a little more quickly than if we could. And we see our neighbors to the south are renovating quite feverishly these days, so we kind of wanted to keep up with them. So thank you very much, folks, and keep on with this program.
Next, we have Beverly and Shelley Buckton. The Bucktons are here this evening to receive a facade grant for property located on 932 3rd Avenue West. This property is designated under the Ontario Heritage Act and is listed on the Register of Properties of Cultural Value or Interest. The house was used circa 1910 as a U.S. consulate and was closed in 1912 due to a decline in the shipping industry in Owen Sound. It is now used as a single-family dwelling and home to the Buckton family. In 2016, the Bucktons received a facade grant to assist with the restoration of the front porch. Tonight, they are in attendance to receive a facade grant to assist with the restoration of the north and south chimneys. These multi-flue chimney shafts in the red brick and all brickwork are identified heritage attributes in the designation bylaw and the property's heritage conservation and easement agreement. Thank you for your commitment to heritage and preserving this beautiful and historic home.
Hi, we'd just like to, once again, because we have also been here before, thank council and the mayor and certainly the building office for all the wonderful work that they do. Sometimes building offices get a bum rap, but we have found them to be the loveliest and most helpful people to deal with. Our last renovation was to that porch. We tore it down and rebuilt it. And these chimneys would have seemed like a simple job, but they were not. They're very elaborate. They're top-heavy. They're complicated. Finding the right people to work on it was challenging. So we're thrilled with the work that they did. And once again, with the help from the town, we were able to subsidize the cost of it a little bit. We've now put well over $100,000 into this house, and we're not done. We're going to keep going. We have an elaborate landscape plan in place for next year, a roof going on, so the work continues. But it's such a gem, and it's really in quite beautiful shape, and we're just so grateful to live there that it's a labor of love for us. And finally, I'd just like to say that we moved here from Newmarket 2 years ago, and Newmarket is a big, thriving, affluent town, and we had a heritage home there that we also worked on feverishly. But that big, booming town of Newmarket did not put a penny into heritage. They talked about it, but the city of Owen Sound, with a much smaller tax base, doesn't just talk about it, they put their money where their mouth is. They support this program with dollars and with passion and with a really committed building department. So we're really grateful for that. We think it's awesome, and we're so proud to be part of this project, and we do hope you continue with it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. So now we're off on to Dave Alexander and Gloria Hebert. Gloria is the board chair, and Dave Alexander is the vice chair for the Billy Bishop Museum. And they're both here this evening to receive a facade grant on behalf of the Billy Bishop Home and Museum located on 932 3rd Avenue West. This property is designated under the Ontario Heritage Act and is listed on the Register of Properties of Cultural Value or Interest. The museum was the boyhood home of the First World War flying ace, Billy Bishop, from 1894 to 1911. The building was built in 1884 and is historically significant as a fine example of Victorian Gothic with shingled gables and an expansive veranda. The grant is being given to assist with repairing the driveway chimney, including tear down, upper portion, and rebuild, repairing center chimney by removing and replacing damaged bricks and repointing where needed, removing and reconstructing the rear chimney with new flashing, repairing, replacing, painting tin as required, removing Portland-based mortar and reapplying new mortar that is lime-based, and repairing the foundation. The city-owned building is very important to our community, and the work being done is necessary for its preservation and long-term structural integrity. Thank you to the board for your continued commitment to the Billy Bishop Museum.
And thank the city for the supporting the Billy Bishop Museum as a National Historic Site. It's a wonderful old house. If you haven't come to visit, you must. We appreciate all the support that we get from the city and from our people in the community as well. Please come by, take a look, and thank you again.
Thanks, Gloria.
Thank you for your continued support, and I think we did mention it's a National Historic Site, which is significant, and it's a shared responsibility with the city of Owen Sound being the owner of the building. So, thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have Bernice Cannell, Women's House serving Bruce and Gray. Bernice is here this evening to receive a facade grant on behalf of the Women's House serving Bruce and Gray. This property is designated under the Ontario Heritage Act and is listed on the Register of Properties of Cultural Value or Interest. This property was designated in 1993 and is the best intact example of the parapet style left in Owen Sound. This historical property was owned by Mr. John Sloan in the late 1870s, who was an early local business person with combined skills of cabinet making along with musical instrument fabrication. This property received a facade grant in 2000 for brick repair and repointing and removing the paint from the brick. This was one of the first facade grants approved under the program. The grant this evening is being given to assist reconstructing and painting the first story cornice to match the existing design and color, capping the top of the new cornice and flashing and roofing, repainting the wood elements of the sign, board, and the storefront in the existing color. Thank you for all your commitment to maintaining the historical details of this designated building.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, thanks again. I'd like to sort of ditto what everyone else has contributed. We were in a bit of a dire emergency because it was very crumbling and falling apart, and it was a bit of an emergency situation for us. So we really appreciated the response from the city and the support. Thank you.
Yeah, so once again, I'd like just to extend a big thanks to all those individuals who have been taking advantage of the facade grant program. If it wasn't for your help and assistance, we wouldn't be able to preserve some of these historical sites that we do have in our city. So we do thank each of you for being a part of this program. So thank you.
So I thank Councillor Dodd, who is also the chair of the Community Services Committee, for doing that. So we're down to number 9, which is public question period. If there is any member of the public that wishes to ask a question of council, this is the time. And I'm not seeing anyone, even Bill's not heading for the microphone, so I guess we're okay. Number 10, we have correspondence that we received from Mr. Pierce, Chairman of the Owen Sound Police Services Board. You going to present it, Brianna, or just the fact that we've got it? We've all read it. Councillor O'Leary, do you want to speak to it?
Sure. I think we'd all agree, Your Worship, going through the process of the OPP costing was the right thing to do. We have succeeded in establishing a benchmark and have asked the police board to respond with a service review of their own and to review the cost comparison. As the letter states, the police board has agreed to do both. The unfortunate part of the process is the time it took to get the costing. which was totally out of our control. That has caused some stressful times for the people facing job losses if we had have switched to OPP. With council's blessing, perhaps we can put this to rest and let these families go into the holidays with worries of losing their, without worries of losing their jobs. So I would move that in consideration of all information provided, it be resolved that City Council reject the Ontario Provincial Police contract proposal for police services and continue to be served by Owen Sound Police Services.
Thank you. Any discussion? No, I'm going to call the question. Oh, Councillor.
Ask for a recorded vote, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Counselor Dodd?
In favor?
Counselor Gregg?
In favor?
Sorry. Counselor Kepke?
In favor?
Counselor Lemon? In favor. Counselor McManaman?
In favor.
Counselor O'Leary?
In favor.
Counselor Thomas?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Wright?
In favor.
Mayor Body?
In favor?
The resolution is carried with 9 in favor and 0 opposed.
There we go. Good. Thank you. And half the room's going to leave. Well, not half the room. But. So next on our agenda is number 11, reports of committees. Starting off with the first report.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah. Go ahead.
This is the Great Sauble Conservation Authority's draft budget for 2018 that was presented to city staff a couple weeks ago. The Great Sauble Conservation Authority is one of 36 conservation authorities in the province. They serve Grey and Bruce counties, and their total levy is prorated to the participating municipalities based on our current value assessment. The draft budget presented includes an overall increase of 4.6% to the municipal levy component, and that accounts for approximately 40% of the total revenues received by the Conservation Authority. Owen Sound's share will only see an increase, however, though, of 3.66%, and that's due to changes in the current value assessment and how that's prorated. And the total dollar values of that increase would be $9,310. So that increase will be captured in the final budget presentation that's coming to council at the meeting at the end of January. That says the 24th, or sorry, that's their meeting. That will come forward to the end of January, and we fund this levy through our water rates. The Conservation Authority is requesting, if you have any questions or comments, that you provide them before January 17th, and they will be adopting their final budget on January 24th.
Okay, discussion? Councillor Kepke?
I'll move the recommendation contained in the report, Your Worship.
Okay. So now any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Number 2, Director of Community Services.
Thank you, Worship. This report is following a public meeting that you had to consider input from the public on a notice to declare surplus and dispose of municipal property. So November 20th, you had considered a report regarding the potential sale and declaring surplus of lands in the industrial park. They're located on the west side of 16th Avenue, just north of 20th Street. The lands are 4.7 acres in area. Notice was given through the clerk's office, and on December 4th, council hosted a public meeting. We didn't receive any input in person or in writing at the public meeting, and the recommendation is that council would approve a bylaw to declare the subject land surplus.
Good, thank you. Councillor O'Leary?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation.
Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Number 3, question on the ballot with regard to casinos.
Yes, through your worship. On November 20th, council requested that staff prepare a report respecting the effectiveness of a plebiscite for allowing a casino to open in the city of Owen Sound. In order to place a question on the ballot, the Municipal Elections Act has several requirements, one of them being that the question must be within council's jurisdiction, and another being that the results of the question are binding on the municipality if at least 50% of the eligible voters vote, and more than 50% of the voters' votes on the question are in favor of those results. In consultation with the OLG, they advise that they have no plans to adjust the gaming zones, and setting the gaming zones is not within a municipality's jurisdiction. If council was to put a question on the ballot and the vote was favorable, there would be nothing to bind the municipality as it is not in their decision to make. The resolution listed in the report is that council receive the report for information purposes.
Good, thank you. Councillor Kapke?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm rather pleased to see what this report says, because this, adding casinos to our area can be just another predator for vulnerable people in the area, and we certainly have our share of vulnerable people here. So I'm happy to move the recommendation and receive this report for information.
Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Lemon?
Well, yes, we do have vulnerable people in this area, and the province of Ontario takes advantage of them to a very large degree. I do not know how many outlets we have in Owen Sound for 649 and for all the various and sundry draws that they have. The unfortunate thing is that we don't get necessarily any revenue back from that source, whereas communities that do. I believe we should have a plebiscite. So we go on record as that things change. We are not currently in a zone for any casinos or slot revenues. There are a lot of myths out there about who actually goes there. If we're worried about vulnerable people, there's an awful lot of money, millions and millions, are spent each week on various and sundry provincial-run lotteries. We have some gaming in town, and to me, it's to say no is to having a plebiscite at this time. The question comes up is what would happen if they change the boundaries, which has happened before. Would we be in a position to accept a casino, or do we want a casino? And I think, or a slot presence. I believe that is a question for the people to decide, and I think by accepting this motion, we're denying the residents an opportunity to express themselves as to whether or not they want this, because it is something significant if it happens. And I think the people should be allowed to speak on this issue as much as they speak on a lot of other things. I do believe it met the criteria. It did some 20 years ago when the first one was held, and was defeated by 0.1%. So it was a 50-50. I think it's by not letting the people speak, we're denying them the ability to express what they see as beneficial to the community. Thank you.
Thank
I will
you.
vote against that motion when asked for a recorded vote.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to it? Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Your Worship. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but after that, I think I have to. Councillor Lemon, if that's the criteria, why don't we put every question on the ballot? Why don't we ask the federal government to move the federal government to Owen Sound? Why don't we ask them to move Disney World here? We could put every question that ever comes up on the ballot. We are only, as the report states, we don't have any jurisdiction in this matter. So to put out there that we could put it on the ballot and somehow influence what would happen, again, why don't we put every question on the ballot then?
Well, this is a question that has to do very much like the liquor plebiscites that we had years ago. This is a question that's perhaps a moral issue. It's very much different than the questions you alluded to. I would love to see Ottawa move some of their functions out of Ottawa to this area. I'd love to see the province do that instead of centralizing it. But this is to me, it's a moral question. I look at alcohol and gaming in the same way. as being moral questions rather than political questions.
So marijuana sales should be on the ballot as well?
Councilor McManaman, we're going to move on.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Others? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Oh, it's going to be recorded vote. Sorry, go ahead.
Councillor Dodd,
In favor?
Councillor Gregg,
In favor.
Councillor Kepke,
In favor?
Councillor Lemon, Councillor McManaman, Councillor O'Leary,
In favor.
Councillor Thomas,
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Wright,
In favor.
Mayor Body.
In favor?
The resolution is carried with 8 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you. Number 4 is manager of property, Bell Canada lease renewal.
Thank you, Worship. Since 1978, the city has leased a small room at our fire hall, about 55 square feet, to Bell Canada. The current lease agreement ends in March of 2018. The agreement does provide Bell to exercise a 5-year extension, and there are, beyond this, 2 additional options for extension. They pay $871 a year in rent, about $4,300 over the 5-year term, and the rent increases 10% at the beginning of each new term. We've confirmed that this space does not impact any of the renovations planned for the fire hall. So the recommendation is that council would approve the bylaw to allow the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement.
Good, thank you. Deputy Mayor Wright?
Yes, I will move that recommendation.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Number 5, report from Deputy Clerk with regard to boards and committees. Go ahead, Kurt.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, the report before council this evening is a housekeeping report as we begin the board and committee process, formally beginning in January 2018. The housekeeping report, as it lays before you, has 3 real recommendations tonight for council's consideration. One, that we reconfirm the appointments of the council members on the City Hall Accommodations Ad Hoc Committee for the earlier of a 1-year term or until the mandate of the committee is met. Hopefully the committee will meet its mandate before 1 year is out. Second would be to dissolve the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Incorporation Ad Hoc Committee. As has been reported by the city manager in recent meetings, that the mandate will be very difficult to reach, and therefore we'd recommend dissolving that committee. And the third would be to make a few minor changes to the committee calendar, as has already been approved by council at this point. One would be to move the Economic Development and Tourism Advisory Committee to a quarterly meeting schedule, as well as proposing a quarterly meeting schedule for the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Advisory Committee, which has yet to meet. And with that being said, these recommendations are here for council's consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Your Worship. I won't be able to support the motion, the report motion as it stands. I feel quite strongly that certainly the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Advisory Committee should be meeting on a monthly basis, initially at least. Given what's gone on over the past 6 months, I think that we're entering a phase where some building of bridges and mending of fences needs to take place, and I think that this is one committee that is going to need to meet fairly regularly to accomplish that going forward.
Other discussion? Councillor Lemon?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would certainly agree with Councillor Thomas on the Tom Thompson. I also feel that economic development, which is a really important function, I think it should be meeting more often than quarterly. I would, the lowest number of meetings be once every couple of months rather than quarterly. I think it should be increased to at least that. And the other thing I would ask that the reconfirmation of those persons serving on municipal nonprofit housing be included. We're right in the middle of a project which, due to changes by the county to some of the housing that they own, which they're intending to sell off, there may be an opportunity to continue the Odawa build and obtain more units there. So I would ask that that also, has that we've had a motion for the recommendations. I would ask that the item...
It hasn't been moved yet, but there's still some discussion to happen, I think.
Yeah, I would request that there be a number 4, reconfirming the 2 council appointees to the Owen Sound Housing Company and Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing.
I want to come back to that before we put that on. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Thomas, you chair the Economic Development.
Yeah, I'll just address that quickly, Your Worship. I think that the recommendation, we haven't discussed it, but it probably comes from the fact that occasionally we do struggle with our agendas in terms of getting things on there. We have, I think on that committee, we came out of the gate so fast after the 2014 election and got so much going all at once that we're just sort of catching up with everything now. From my perspective, I think that the way the committee operates now works fine. I think that often meetings are at the call of the chair. If there's, a meeting skipped because there's not a lot for the agenda, that's the way we've handled it. And my personal preference would be to see it remain that way, because I think that, as we've discussed with the recommendations from the Growth Committee coming forward, probably a lot of that will land on the Economic Development and Tourism Advisory Committee. I would certainly support seeing that schedule stay as it is presently.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to Mr. Law here, or Brianna. When does the housing appointments come back up?
It'll be coming back forward in January 15th, but if it's council's wish to reconfirm those appointments now, then we could have that as part of our report.
Okay, and my second question, given the wording of the recommendation, it doesn't really set out in the recommendation that you're going to quarterly meetings unless I see it's under that the committee calendar. So is it easier for us to fool around with it now, or is it easier to table it to the January 15th meeting and then relook at that calendar? I'm relying on you.
Now would be preferable.
Okay, there we go. Councillor Thomas?
I'm prepared to move recommendations 1 and 2, Your Worship.
I'm going to go back to Mr. Law. In that number 3 with regard to the council and committee calendar, does it cover other committees as well?
This recommendation?
Yeah.
It would just cover as noted in the report, meaning economic development and the proposed Tom Thompson.
Okay. Good. There we go. So Councillor Thomas is moving just 1 and 2 in the recommendation.
If clarification, would that mean quarterly meetings for both, or would that allow us to continue on?
That's status quo.
Status quo, all right.
Unless there's another motion.
Hold on, yeah. Brandon, did you want to speak there? Was your hand going up? Please go ahead.
If it's council's wish to just vote on those first 2 items, that's fine, but a subsequent motion would be appreciated regarding...
Be the cleanest.
Regarding when you would like the Art Gallery Committee to meet, as well as Economic Development.
So we'll do that subsequently. Okay. Councillor Gregg, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Mayor. I would agree fully on the Tom Thompson, especially early on. I can see where we could get ourselves, or perhaps should get to, where it would be 4 times a year. I'm in full agreement that economic development should not be going to quarterly. I haven't seen the results. Economic development is always an extremely uphill, steep climb that takes a lot of investment and a lot of time and a lot of resources, and it's pretty slow to see the outcome or the fruits of the labor. And in 3 years yet, I don't think a lot is too obvious to the community, so I think there's a lot of hard work needs to be done there yet. I also had one concern, and I've mentioned this before, where I thought as a new council, the first 2 months of a new council to sit on a committee for 2 months was an introduction to DUM. I sat on the Tom Thompson, and during our first budget, it was alluded to that there was a budget presentation, and I said, no, there wasn't. And they said, oh, yes, there was. And I said, I don't think so. I was at that meeting. No, there wasn't. oh, well, yeah, you're kind of right, it was only at Resource Committee, so we didn't really have it. The problem with that was, after 2 more weeks, I'm no longer on that committee, there's a new member on that committee, and your hands are somewhat washed of it. And that next member hasn't had that same familiarization right off the bat. So I'm in favor of any immediate reports in December can always go right to council. The first meeting in December could, and I think should be, when any council would choose your committees. That's where it's actually most routinely done in our surrounding municipalities. They choose them right off the go, and then they're hopping for the next year. So I don't see why we continue to have it drag out for council till the end of January. You sit on a committee once or twice, try to invest yourself in what's going on, and then in February you're in a new committee. So that's my input and concern with how it is as well right now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kepke?
Just a comment on Councillor Gregg's comment. It only happens at the first of the election that you're appointed if there are not enough councillors returning from the previous election. The rest of the time, it is consecutive, that all appointments end January 31st, new appointments start February 1st, both public and council. So I don't see it as being an issue. But I do agree, though, that both of these committees need to meet more often than quarterly.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the motion that is on the table, and that's for the first 2 items in the recommendation. So if there's any more discussion on those that are being moved now, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Go ahead, Jim.
Subsequent motion. I hear what people are saying. I would suggest then the art gallery meet monthly. I agree with Councillor Gregg. After it gets rolling, perhaps there's opportunities there, but let's set the schedule monthly. On economic development, what about the idea of every 2 months? I know staff are gear up for meetings, and it's that committee. We have a number of professionals on that committee that are trying to set their schedule, and I just think having a meeting, moving a meeting, canceling a meeting, I just think, why don't we try the every 2 months then and see how that goes as a sort of a compromise. Set the schedule and stick to it for every 2 months. So that's my motion, Your Worship. And as far as when those meetings are, I would ask that be brought back to that January 15th meeting about, because I don't think anyone here,
to be able to put it into the calendar.
Just put it in the calendar where it fits best, and then we can discuss it at that point. I don't think we know now whether we want the 3rd Thursday or the 2nd Monday or whatever it might be. So my motion would be that we direct that the art gallery meet monthly and the economic development meet every other month.
Curtis? Go ahead.
Yes, we can do that. The only meeting that would be needed to be plugged into the calendar would be the Tom Thompson, as that's not in the committee calendar right now. Economic development is scheduled to meet monthly as it stands currently, so whether it was quarterly or every 2 months or monthly, the meetings are there. They are set right now for the schedule going forward. So it might be a matter of pulling back, depending on council's decision.
Good, thank you. Councillor Lemon.
I would request that motion be split in 2. I strongly favor the suggestion with the art gallery, but I do not agree with the suggestion on economic development.
So you'd rather keep economic development monthly as well, is that what you're saying? Okay, discussion, Councillor Thomas?
If I were to go back and check my calendar, Councillor Lemon, I'll bet we met the equivalent of every 2nd month this past year in any case at economic development. I certainly don't have any problem with going to that schedule for the time being, seeing how it works. If it doesn't, we can always revisit it again next year before committees are set.
Or perhaps even this year if we find that there's too much activity for bi-monthly meetings.
Well, and I think that all of our committees have the availability of a meeting at the call of the chair if that were the case.
Councillor Kepke?
Just on the other boards and committees, will there be an opportunity to discuss whether there's council appointments to some of the other committees? at another time? Is there a report coming in January? So is that the time you should do it, or do you want to know ahead of time? My thought being that I'm wondering if we need a counselor on the Falls Prevention Committee. Questionably as well, the Festival of Northern Lights.
That would, well, go ahead.
I think it might be best if we deal with it in January because we haven't provided the public with notice.
There we go. Okay, so with regard to Councillor McManaman's motion, it's on the floor. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. So we're down to number 6, I think. Oh, Councillor Lemon.
Subsequent motion, of which I pointed out earlier, and that was that to reconfirm the appointments to the Owen Sound Housing Company and municipal nonprofit housing, and the reason for that, we are right in the middle of a build.
Okay.
Same argument as for the City Hall.
Yeah, you hit the points a minute ago. Good. So it's that would be you and Deputy Mayor Wright?
Yes, that's correct.
And is Deputy Mayor Wright interested in that?
That's fine.
Yes. Okay, other discussion? Councillor Kapke?
Just, that's sort of out of the norm, right? That usually is one of the picks, and maybe some others would like to be on that committee. I don't know that it is a protected committee.
No, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Wright.
It's, we're right in the middle of a build, 28 units now, going up to 90 units. And as far as I'm concerned, it wouldn't matter to me if I wasn't on that committee. But Councillor Lemon has been on the building committee and been doing an awful lot of work to see that builds. So I certainly think that Councillor Lemon's position should be protected. I would gladly give up my position if there's someone else that wants to sit on it. That's not a problem with me. So if Councillor Lemon, if we just want to make the motion that Councillor Lemon be on that, and if someone else wants to pick, I don't care.
Well, I think that's still worth discussing, given that you've been there through this build, and you've got a lot of knowledge in there, too. So just before we go there...
Just further to my question, then, does this include the other public members on the committee that do we have a letter somewhere on their request to reappoint? Where is it, in information package, or? I thought I saw it somewhere, but where is it?
It was closed session.
Okay, so further discussion. So Councillor Lemon's motion right now is that both he and Deputy Mayor Wright be appointed for the next year, given the build that they're doing, the work that they've done, and will continue to do, and the acquired knowledge that they have. We can vote that up or vote it down, and thereafter, if there's a subsequent motion to do something a little bit different, we can do it then. So I'm going to call the question on that motion. All in favor? And that is carried. Now, if we can go to number 6, Ms. Coulter, I believe, the easement agreement.
Thank you, Worship. Martin and Melody Donald own property on the unopened portion of 28th Avenue East, and in 2006, under a previous zoning bylaw, they were able to construct a dwelling and barn. In 2006, there was access and servicing agreements which were required to provide access to the property. For some time, staff have worked with the Donalds toward new agreements, as certain conditions under which the previous agreements had been approved had changed. On May 29th, staff met on site with the Donalds together with the city solicitor, and that evening at a closed session, you had directed that we prepare and bring forward an easement agreement. That was shared with the Donalds in June, and the new agreement will replace those previous access and servicing agreements. The new agreement is clear and concise and will be easier for both the Donalds and city staff to work with. The easement is a legal easement for the purposes of ingress and egress. The Donalds are responsible to maintain the lands, that unopened portion of 28th, for their own purposes of access, and the agreement does provide indemnification for the city and also provides insurance naming the city. We will now be able to move forward with an application for a building permit that they've submitted on those lands. So the recommendation, Your Worship, is that you would direct staff to bring forward a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute that easement agreement, and that the city solicitor, in this case Elliott and Elliott, register the agreement, and following that registration, the previous access and servicing agreements would be removed from title.
Good, thank you. Councillor Dodd, your hand up there?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I would be more than happy to move this recommendation. As we can see through the background, this has been going on for a long period of time. So to have a final easement agreement put in place between the city and the applicant, this is a good move forward.
Okay. Any discussion? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next one is election. Yours? It's yours?
Yes, through Your Worship. The clerk's office has started preparing for the 2018 municipal election. This is just a general report that discusses the composition of council, establishment of wards, questions on the ballot, contribution rebates, language of notice and forms, and recount policies. The resolution in this report is for council to receive it for information purposes. Direction will be required should council require further information on any of the items listed in the report.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary?
I'll move the recommendation.
Any discussion? Any questions? Is that a question? No? Oh, you're voting. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Community planner, site plan amendment.
Thank you, Worship. This is an application for an amendment to site plan approval for the Sydenham condominium building, which I think council is familiar with, on 9th Street and 1st Avenue East. The report provides a history of a number of applications with respect to the property. In terms of the current proposal, if we go to page 3 of the report, what we're seeing is a proposed expansion that was approved through a Committee of Adjustment application in the orange area on the 7th story of the building, an addition of 2 dwelling units in that area, the movement of some amenity space and the gym to the 2nd floor, 2 units taking up that space, and at the north end of the 1st story roof, on the flat roof, there would be an area used for a covered balcony for one of the suites, as well as a balcony for the media room, and then a wooden pergola in that area using the timbers from the former Lovelace building. The official plan designates the property downtown commercial, and it indicates that the development shall support and be compatible with the heritage character of the area. Architectural control guidelines have been submitted to consider the additional massing of the building and are discussed further in the report. The 7th floor addition does warrant further review from a geotechnical assessment, and that was recommended both by the city's building division and by the Conservation Authority at the time of the variance. So we're looking for confirmation that the structure, piles, and soils can support that addition in what I'll call the orange area, to the satisfaction of the CBO and to the Conservation Authority. The report on pages 10 to 14 provides some significant detail in the changes with respect to architectural control guidelines since council last considered the application. The design of the buildings, as indicated on the architectural drawings as they were submitted, has changed since both the original architectural control guidelines and then since the 2017 version. The guidelines are listed as part of the approved drawing set in the site plan approval. So we're recommending, or the conditions are recommending, that the 2017 guidelines be redlined to remove paragraphs referring to features that aren't present, and that the site plan agreement lists specific requirements for construction taken from the original guidelines. The list is no longer relevant, and a condition is recommended that the applicant provide an addendum point form list based on the final architectural drawings which indicate the key features of the building which makes it suitable for this prominent location. And then we would use that checklist to evaluate any future requests to modify the building further. It's also recommended that the final plans not be approved and the site plan agreement not come forward for signature until a time when we have the complete set of building drawings to the satisfaction of the CBO. That will allow us to ensure that the site plan drawings and the building detailed drawings for the interior fit-up have plans that match. With that, Your Worship, in consideration of the report from the community planner, we would recommend that council approve in principle the site plan by Montgomery King Architects, last revised October 15th, subject to the 4 conditions outlined in Appendix A. That council would pass a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute that third amending agreement, and that nothing in the approval be construed as relieving the applicant further obligations under the servicing agreement.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thomas?
I'd move those recommendations, Your Worship.
Okay, questions, discussions? Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. To the Director, just quickly, the architectural control guidelines, the Appendix A that was in our package, talks about a wall that does not meet those guidelines and that needs to be fixed, I guess would be an alternative put in place, and it lists a bunch of alternatives. The new Appendix A just says that you have to meet the treatments that are indicated in the guidelines. So I'm just wondering what the difference between those. One lists them clearly, the other one's just saying follow the guidelines.
My apologies, Your Worship. I should have addressed the amendment that was provided to Appendix A by staff today. And there are 2 masonry walls in the first floor levels that are in the area of the building that's brick. And what we've worked with Mr. Peary to come to an understanding that those walls will be addressed as part of the revised architectural guidelines through Cuesta Planning. Our thinking is that the materials and color will probably blend in with the building as opposed to being the lighter color that is prominent in the stories above. So the conditions as it's written provides a little additional flexibility there, and the guidelines would be prepared by Cuesta and come in for review.
Is that it? Any others? Call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. So we're down to number 9 of 11A. This is engineering technologist with regard to easement agreement.
Thank you, Your Worship. The property located at 1010 First Avenue A West has a very long history, as council is aware. There is a proposal to develop the property into rental units. To do so requires that the water main on First Avenue A West be able to provide fire flows. Unfortunately, it is too small to do so, and staff had to arrange or come up with another alternative that would satisfy the requirement. The proposal is for the city to allow connection to an existing water main that services the fire flows for the adjacent property, which is the Shoppers Drug Mart. Under the arrangement, the city will assume responsibility for that water main. It will allow us to then provide fire flows to the proposed development, as well as it solves a operational problem with respect to maintaining chlorine levels along the length of First Avenue A West. The implication from a financial perspective is that obviously the city will assume responsibility for the water main across the frontage of Shoppers Drug Mart. The city has expended funds to undertake necessary surveys and legal expenses, and we will share with the property owner or the developer the cost of moving and extending the water main and fire hydrant and connecting it to the water main that presently exists on First Avenue A West. So the staff recommendation is that City Council pass a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the easement agreements as attached to the report.
Good, thank you. Councillor Lemon?
Question, there is already a fire hydrant on First Avenue A West, is there not, adjacent to the shopper's property. I seem to remember seeing something.
That fire hydrant does exist, Your Worship. It is privately owned and is part of this agreement. That fire hydrant will be relocated to the north end of the First Avenue A West property, and it will be connected to the water main that is on First Avenue A West, thereby closing the link.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, you are moving the report, Councillor Lemon? He's indicating yes. Any other questions? All in favor? That is carried. Number 10 from the junior planner, acknowledgement direction of transfer of easement required by consent.
Thank you, Your Worship. If we could just go to page 2 of the report. In July, the Committee of Adjustment had approved an application for consent for the purposes of a lot addition and an easement for drainage in the Woodlands Estate subdivision. The area with the black arrows from Lot 41 is being transferred to Lot 44 for the purposes of just making that side yard a little larger and a little more usable. Council's approval is required for the registration of the new easement and the transfer, release, and abandonment of the existing easement. So, Your Worship, we would request Council authorize a bylaw to allow those things to happen.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wright?
Yes, I will move that recommendation, yes. Again.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Number 11, I think. Yep, Bruce Municipal Telephone System.
Yes, Your Worship. In 2002, the city executed an agreement with the Bruce Municipal Telephone Company to allow for their infrastructure to be placed within the city's municipal right-of-ways. The company is currently undergoing a corporate restructuring with transfer of assets to a new corporate entity, the name of which has been tentatively set but not confirmed as yet. The arrangement that was put in place in 2002 requires the city's permission to assign the agreement, and the new corporate entity is requesting permission to do so.
Simple, thank you. Councillor Gregg? Is moving
Move
it?
the recommendation.
Good, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Number 12, facilities booking.
Thank you, Your Worship. 3HL Tour, the world's first 3-on-3 professional hockey league, is looking to have a 3-on-3 hockey tournament at the J.D. MacArthur Arena here at the Harry Lumley Bayshore on Saturday, January 13th, beginning at 2 in the afternoon. They would use the Attacks joint liquor license, and they're expecting about 1,500 fans for the game. The recommendation is that Council would approve the 3HL Tour request to use the Bayshore, subject to the conditions outlined in the report and the appendix.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas?
I'd move that recommendation, Your Worship.
And any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Number 13, verbal or oral report from the Director of Community Services.
Thank you, Worship. At your last meeting, Council considered a fees bylaw with respect to all the different city fees. And at that time, you had referred Class B and C ball diamonds to Community Services Committee for additional study and report. Tonight, I would like to ask that you also defer the Class A fields to the committee for further review. We want to ensure that the comparables and the hours at which we were looking at the comparables with Mr. Parsons is in fact comparing apples to apples. So if Council wouldn't mind referring the Class A fields to the committee for additional review and study, that would be appreciated.
So that takes a motion? Yep. Councillor Gregg?
Yeah, from what I'm aware of, I'd move that recommendation.
Okay, simple discussion. All in favor? That's carried. Number 14 is your report from County Council.
Thank you very much. It's a short report, but a little bit different tonight. We did have a presentation by three participants who were involved in the opioids, and they talked to us about the situation in our area. It was interesting because we had a presentation on opioids at county and another one at the Board of Health, and it is a serious problem, and it is a serious problem in our area, and they're working very hard to help this program, and we have helped by allowing the drug to stem overdoses on our fire trucks, and of course our police carried it as well, so that's something that we have done. But they're just saying out of 850 users, and a user is anyone who takes a pain pill or continues to take even Tylenol, extra strength, those sorts of things on a continual basis is a user, and 1 out of 850 users ends up in an overdose. So it becomes pretty serious. One bit of information I thought that you might be interested in is comes from the Board of Health, and I have been re-elected to go on the Board of Health as a county representative. So I'm happy to do that because I believe that with the number of people we have living in the city of Owen Sound and all of the services that are here in Owen Sound, that the city should have a representative on the Board of Health, and hopefully that trend will continue. The population of Grey Bruce it's a slight increase. It's up to 161,977, which was a 2.1% growth. The average age in Grey Bruce is 45 years old. Seniors make up 23.9%. Children under 14 make up 15.2%. And the greatest area for juniors is the Southgate, the southern end of our county has the most young people in it. Blue Mountain area has the most elderly people, 33% are over 65. Of course, that makes sense because that's where people are retiring to. They're building their big retirement homes up in Blue Mountain. 15% live in the low income rate. Owen Sound and Chatsworth have 20% of those people that live in the low income rate. 16% of the people own their homes, that live on low income own their homes. 45% of people that live on that have low income are renters. 28% of the immigration is in Toronto, 8% is in Grey Bruce, and 29% in Canada. When you look at education, 14% in this area have less than high school, 58% have post-secondary. And the employment rate is 57%, which seems to be awfully high. Those are just some stats that came through, so that's my report.
Good. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thanks. We're down to 11B, which is the consent agenda items.
Yes, through your worship. On the consent agenda this evening is minutes for receipt from the Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation and the Owen Sound Housing Company. There is a request from the Sydenham Sportsmen's Association to hold their annual raffle at the 2018 Salmon Spectacular. The following businesses has received final approval: the Hungry Hippo Child Care Center at 1809 17th Street East, Richard Eve Satoski, a home occupation at 921 4th Ave East, Ryerson Massage Therapy Clinic at 1260 2nd Ave East, and a karate club at St. Basil's School. Lastly, there is correspondence received, which is presented for the information of council. A full listing is available at 11B5.
Great, thank you. Councillor Kepke?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have, there was one item in the consent that I wish to pull, so I've adjusted the motion to explain that. That City Council, moved by myself, the City Council received items 11B1 to 11B4 on the consent agenda dated December 18, 2017, and further that item 11B5 being correspondence from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs respecting protection of water for future generations public consultation be referred to the Grace Alba Conservation Authority for comments, and a copy of those comments being provided to the member municipalities of the GSCA.
Okay. Good. Any questions on that? All in favor? That is carried. So if we can come back to the first two are the minutes from Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation and the Owen Sound Housing Company.
A lot of attention with the Owen Sound Housing Company and municipal nonprofit has been on Odawa. The units are moving ahead very quickly. They're pretty well closed in now, and they'll be working on interior work. Concern was expressed about the availability of natural gas in that area, and that has been solved. But it does concern me that we should be making sure that all areas where we can have development have adequate gas for residential development or commercial development as a sideline, but that has been resolved. The committee's been very, very active working with the developer, and there's a meeting coming up I think it's the first week in January to go over where we are with the site. It's going to be a valuable addition to the city of Owen Sound.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon or Deputy Mayor Wright, do you want to touch on the fact that you borrowed some money?
We've had some difficulty with the Central Mortgage and Housing coming across with the money. For some reason or other, the federal government says we're opening this program up and we want to have more housing for people in need in this country, and yet when we're doing it, they're giving us a lot of trouble trying to financially tie it together. So thank you very much to the City of Owen Sound that has twice now given us a loan so that we can proceed, and the county as well has given us a loan that we can now proceed to make our payments to our contractor until we are the recipient of the money that's coming to us from the two governments. So believe me, we're very grateful on the Housing Board to have the city and the county both step in and help us out where the need has been there.
I understand that's the first time the county has stepped up.
That is the first time that the county has stepped up, and I think that that's another reason why it's kind of a good thing that I'm sitting on housing, because the connection between the county and the housing and the Housing Board has been a bit of a help.
That was kind of my point. Go ahead.
Your Worship, I'd like to say in respect to the county, the first time we asked, we received, and so we're 100%, and that's really important, but it also shows the commitment of Grey County towards developing more social housing that's so badly needed. The wait list, when we open those 28 units, will go down a little bit, but not enough.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Just one more thing. Because of the interest in this, well, no doubt this will come in the next set of minutes, but this past year, the Housing Authority, we've been able to remove 27 people off the list of requiring housing. That doesn't seem like an awful lot, but when you have a number of 700 on a waiting list for housing, we've moved 27 off, and that's all. So there is a huge need for additional housing in this community, and hopefully under this new federal program that's out, some of our developers will come forth and will say that they are willing to assist in getting more social housing.
Thank you. Councillor Kepke, did you want to speak to the matter that you worded differently? It was pretty clear what you're doing, but did you want to?
I can speak to that, Your Worship. Just let me dig out the correspondence here. Sorry. So the Ministry of Municipal Affairs is looking for comments regarding watersheds and mapping, et cetera, of watersheds. And I just felt that this shouldn't go unnoticed, and Conservation Authority did receive the correspondence, however, weren't asked to comment. So I just thought, given our municipality direction to them to comment on it would be purposeful because it affects the Greenbelt and the Greater Golden Horseshoe.
And they're the experts for us.
Yes.
Yeah, good, thank you. Councillor Gregg?
Well, if I could ask a question on that, the province is full of CAs. This is for the Greenbelt area, and is it not correct that between Gray Sauble and the Greenbelt area is the Nottawasaga Conservation Area and the Saugeen Conservation Area? So if anybody's going to have some comments, they're next door. I don't see why Gray Sauble has a concern about a study that's far to the south of them. I could be incorrect on that, but I think Saugeen and Nottawasaga are the adjoining abutting CAs. At some point, government has to realize that you can't get into the business of just wanting to do work and trying to stay busy. I just think that's kind of looking at one of these scenarios here where...
Was the letter sent to us?
The letter was sent to us, yes, as well as all the councils, but I feel that Gray Sauble has extensive mapping and can certainly contribute to some of the
So they're looking for everybody's input, and they've got more expertise than we do, so. Thanks. Down to 11C, which is minutes of boards and committees, starting off with community services.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll quickly go through our minutes here. We had a lengthy meeting on Wednesday. So we first had another application regarding our facade and structural improvement program. I don't know how many times I can say facade. But this was regarding the former CPR building. This is the one that is actually going to be turning into a new brew pub. So there was some work that needed to be done about repairing and reinforcing the roof. So some of those repairs include roof repairs, including new flashing and mesh at all exposed corners, roof curb installation, supporting framing for new rooftop units, and new steel beams to the underside of the existing beams. We had a verbal report from the community planner regarding the Recolor Gray update. As we will see, there will be more updates from that coming in the near future. We got a wrap-up from the manager of community development and marketing regarding our summer camp and recreation. Registration numbers, we got a background information on some registration numbers for our hockey skills, power skating, and soccer camps held from June to August of this past summer. And staff are looking to further investigate some other partnership opportunities for on-ice minor sports groups to offer programs to encourage participation and growth amongst 3 to 6 year old age group, as our registration numbers are highest in the lower age groups in the city on ice summer programs. If anyone's actually reading that report outside of and in their own free time, you will note that some of these times it does look like we're running a deficit, but we're actually charging back for ice usage. So we're not actually losing money. It's to make everything look balanced out at the final year. So it's that we're charging ourselves for using the ice time. Further on, we went to the Harrison Park pool refurbishment. We got an update on some of the scope of work revision. When the 24-year-old liner was removed, it was revealed that the concrete wall and tile header were actually 2 separate sections, and they were constructed at 2 different periods of time. And they were no longer bonded. So this kind of changed from what our original scope or original anticipation of what the construction was going to be. So that original tile and concrete header are date back to the 1978 renovation. So they've got some age to them. The removal of this edge impacted the skimmer baskets, which were originally proposed to be reused. Unfortunately, with this removal, now that we had to kind of change that scope of work, so we will be in place of this Renovaction design, which is a skimmer basket, which is an additional cost, but it's actually going to be able to help include some of the additional funds to repair the top wall for that insert as well. Just as a reminder, this plan, the park should be up and operational by May, is it, Pam? May 1st?
The pool will be ready to be open for our regular season.
June 1st?
Early June, yeah.
Perfect. And just as for the public to know that there's also other components that are going to be a part of this project. The change room and washroom, which had been getting quite aged, is going to have a little bit of a renovation to it. and that's being done by in-house staff. And I know I had brought that up at budget one time, but it'd be really interesting to see a report come back about how much the city's actually saving by having in-house staff do some of these projects opposed to contracting them like we used to do in the past, because I think those numbers would be astronomical. And also that the deep pool is going to be completed or turned into a concrete deck, which will have some shade structures and seating area. Great place to hang out. As we move on, we went through the building stats. Building stats again, comparable from last year. Once again, I think it shows that what this council has done over the past 4 years about pushing growth has really been paying out. You're starting to see that the amount of construction value and the amount of fees received are substantially higher. In November of this past, of 2017 compared to 2016, we were at, I think, $6 million in construction value this year, which is amazing. And month after month, when you see those comparisons, it's great. So I think at the end of next meeting, when we get the full year review back, will be, I think that kind of gives us a little bit of an incentive that what we had chosen to do over the past 4 years, or 3 years, sorry, has really helped out. And to end the meeting, we had a public meeting regarding the draft Recreation, Parks and Facilities Master Plan update. This plan is accessible on our website currently, and we're taking feedback from the public until January 12th. So if anyone is interested, has read the plan, the draft plan, and has some updates, they have comments they would like to make, suggestions, we have until January 12th. That was an extension of what was originally done to give you enough time to make sure that council can hear some of your interests or some of your concerns. So just for a generalization, the purpose of the update of the master plan was reviewed demographic trends, identify recreation, parks, and programming trends and gaps, to identify service provision improvements, efficiencies, as well as update the master plan according to analysis results, and provide recommendations to implement to the future to 2028. Some of the key themes that came from the stakeholder consultation, which when Mr. Aston was here, he had noted that we had 505 survey respondents do our survey, which he had noted was almost 300 more respondents than another larger municipality surrounding us had gotten for a plan they had done similarly. So I think that's great that we have that many people in the public who are interested about what the future holds for our parks and recreation. Some of the key findings that we did find from that, from the consultation, park proximity analysis, we did discover there were some areas that potentially are open to maybe having new parks. We had some future parkland development that would be required for the Sydenham Heights region, which is across from the hospital. Analysis of the current playgrounds and potential areas to develop further future playgrounds. Key findings about the parkland analysis, the parkland provision standards as noted in the city's official plan, and the master plan goals and implementation strategy. So once again, I would just like to note that that was the draft presentation that happened on Wednesday, and that whole 96 pages of the master plan is on our website, and we'd be more than happy to hear the public, their concerns and their suggestions, or anything from their feedback. So with that, I'd move approval of these minutes.
Good, thank you. Councillor Lemon?
I have one question pertaining to the indoor turf field that's in that, on, I think it's the last page. Big question comes, it's very, very good to do a survey. I have no problems with that. But part of the survey has got to be who's going to pay for it in terms of capital and operating.
Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Councillor Lemon. That's exactly, I believe, what came from that meeting as well, when Mr. Aston had kind of recommended that it's great to always have a new facility that someone would like to see the city take on, but we're more have to see where the business plan comes from, that who's funding, where's the funding coming from, is our municipality even the right municipality to host that facility, or maybe a neighboring municipality might be a better solution to that. It's going to be an idea that we need to see where that goes in the future, and obviously the individuals who are going to be using that facility need to kind of get together and create their own kind of business plan of who will be using it. We don't even know which activities could potentially be there. And so anyways, that's a progress, something for the future. But you're right, that's a valid point. Who would be funding it, and what kind of business case is there for it?
Thanks. I'll call the question. All in favor of approval of those minutes? That's carried. Next, we have corporate services held from, meeting held December 12th.
Thanks, everybody. Our meeting was a little quicker. Getting the report in which referenced Bill 68, I think, was the report from that meeting, which had a little more urgent timeline. Our clerk, Brianna, could correct me if I'm wrong on that, but fairly quick meeting. The time management stats for the month of November are there for committee's interest. There's no cost to this. These are compiled by the chief anyway, so this is no different than what you've seen in the past carrying forward. The draft procedural bylaw is right now in the draft stage. Bill 68 has precipitated some changes to the bylaw, and I'll just take a quick run through a couple of them. The committee didn't see the need to change more than 2 of the items, and I'll call those out at the end, but some slight changes to the current bylaw include the bylaw will govern all local boards where a separate bylaw has not been adopted. That would be a comparison of the DIA versus the library. I understand the library has their own procedural bylaws, and the DIA would adopt the usage of the cities. It will dispense with need for a warrant for a meeting. Reporting out of closed session is something that we'll see going forward in 2018. Just a short recap of what council went into closed session for. Requiring a notice of motion. This is something that this council's been more proactive on doing the last couple of years, instead of just throwing motions out there and having a limited ability to think about it and forcing a vote. We've already been doing this with the notice of motion. We'll see that moving forward. Written statements of pecuniary interest. These will be something that not only will you declare, but you'll just have something written and submitted to the clerk or secretary in a meeting. Rather small change. Personal information submitted during a meeting of council or committee from a member of the public will be in writing versus the verbal nature it is right now. That's for privacy reasons. Public meetings will be held as part of regular council meetings. We will no longer have need to stand at meetings when we're not in informal, and that's due to accessibility concerns and needs. Deputations for support will be heard at appropriate committees where possible. Guidelines for conduct of public of the members of the public at meetings are within the bylaw. Splitting motion to table and to postpone. The key difference there is motion to table does not have a specific timeline to it. Motion to postpone will have a specific timeline. In the past, we've already been kind of motion to table, and we've sometimes had specific timelines associated with it, so this will differentiate and be more specific. And a couple other, nope, that's most of the key changes to the bylaw. The 2 concerns committee had was that the mayor and city manager will work together on choosing deputations and repetitive deputations, not just a deputation, but repeat requests will be under the judgment of the city manager and the mayor. And the second change is committee was adamant that a member of the public be allowed to ask any question at a council meeting, not just a question in reference to a matter on the agenda. So as part of open and transparent and accountable government, committee felt that that is a need that needs to be protected, so that small change was made. So a member of the public can ask a question of council at any meeting on any matter, and we'll do our best to answer it there or get back to them. Third report was It's called our RIM policy. That's not on Research in Motion. That's our Records Information Management Policy, which is a detailed and carries a lot of scope notes, which you may have read through, but that's a policy that needs to be there to decipher on what records remain with the city for how long and when they should be or shouldn't be destroyed. And the last report was just formalizing how we currently have our city policies ratified by bylaw, and HR is administrative, so it's kept out of, it's separate from that. So with that, I would ask for approval of the minutes.
Good, thank you. All in favor? Oh, did you have a question first? Sorry.
I have a question. First of all, I appreciate very much the committee taking into consideration the concerns or questions I had regarding the procedural bylaw. One, though, that I still question is the reasons for going into closed session from the Municipal Act are not repeated in the procedural bylaw. And if committees are following this procedural bylaw, I just don't know that they'll have their Municipal Act handy with them to know the reasons they can. You did mention about the DIA following these procedures. I believe the DIA might be their own separate board. Council appoints council members to that board, but I don't know that they're actually considered to be one of our committees. So just that concern is still expressed.
Ms. Bloomfield, do you want to respond? You don't have to.
Through your worship, the DIA is considered a local board, and in the Municipal Act, a local board under us would need to adopt our procedural bylaw, unless they have their own. And as to the keeping the closed session items in the procedural bylaw, if council wishes those to be included, that can happen. We decided to leave it out just so that we're being responsive to change, so that if the legislation changes, we don't have to change our procedural bylaw.
Okay. If you need to.
I think you're inquiring into just including Section 239 of the Municipal Act to it. It's not likely to see change. I mean, I think that's been static since 2001, so I would be receptive to including it. I don't know if it's just the addition of that paragraph of the 7 items plus one as to, just for referencing purposes. I'm not sure how others may feel, but I'd be fine with it.
Councillor Lemon?
Yeah, there's one part in here, and I don't know where it came from. Bringing food or beverage, with the exception of water, into a meeting room unless authorized. And it was duly noted that council have beverages provided to them during council meetings. If this is included in the procedural bylaw, it'll be documented and will allow enforcement to happen. Has this been an issue? Like, I never known that we've had any problem with this. Why all of a sudden is this big, all this included, and why? And under what?
Councillor Dodd has the answer.
Thank you, Councillor Lemon. That was brought up during committee. It's basically there to impose that if someone comes in and brings a full chef wok Chinese food meal, that while we're in a meeting, that there's an ability to say that's probably not appropriate during that setting. But the fact that we have a beverage or someone in the audience has a coffee, I don't think we're going to go out there and say that's a violation of the procedural bylaw, hit the road. I think it's more there for the extreme circumstances of if someone's going to the harsh right side of that. If they're eating a full Domino's pizza in front of you, is that appropriate?
Does that exclude beer?
I do recall actually last council, somebody coming in with hoagies and great big Slurpees, and they did slurp rather loud, and it was a distraction. But they were cheering for Councillor Lemon at the time, so
Oh, yeah.
They're going poof, poof, poof every time he talked, remember?
So to further that, Councillor Lemon, it was just it's there in the procedural bylaw just for instances when we feel that it would be necessary to act on that, not a daily occurrence where we're going to be putting down the hammer.
Okay, so I think Councillor Greg?
And I'm not sure if it's just a slight amendment to the approval of all the minutes to consider Councillor Kepke's comment there. I don't think we need a separate motion or anything on that, or do we? Sure. Yeah, we'll just include that with the approval of the minutes with the addition of the Section 239 as a reference tool.
Good. Okay, so with that, everyone approves, all in favor? That is carried. What are we down to? Economic Development Tourism?
Thanks, Your Worship. It was quite a lengthy and excellent meeting, and I'll just try to keep my report a little bit shorter than the meeting itself was. I'm just kidding. We had a report from Savannah Myers at Grey County on county economic development initiatives, which was quite excellent. They seem to be on fire up there, and they're taking us along with them, and that's a good thing. We had a verbal report from our Manager of Community Development and Marketing regarding the Are You Most campaign. We talked about a wrap-up of the campaign and little stories of its successes. Item C was a report from our Director of Community Services regarding the Retail Business Holidays Act, and it's a draft guideline and application, and I just want to draw Council's attention to that. The recommendation there was that in consideration of the report, we are recommending to Council receive the guideline and form that were created, and recommended that as a next step, the material be forwarded to the City Solicitor for review, and number 2 is forward the draft guideline and form to the DIA and the Chamber of Commerce for review after the City Solicitor has reviewed and provided feedback. So basically, the upshot is we're looking at the possibility of allowing businesses that would like to open on statutory holidays to open on statutory holidays. We are not forcing anyone to do anything they don't want to do, but what we're doing is creating the opportunity for businesses that are interested in doing that. And the final item was an update on staff roles in economic development and tourism. And with that, Your Worship, I would move acceptance of these minutes.
Thank you. I don't see anybody putting up their hand for questions, so I won't look any further. Go ahead.
I'll be brief.
Get you to turn it back on.
Sorry. There's one other item that was there, and that is a lack of signage on the bypass directing people to Owen Sound and attractions. And I think we should be following up with Grey County on that, since it is a county road.
Mr. Ritchie?
I have already called them, and that's in the works, Your Worship.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Call the question, all in favor for approval of those minutes, that's carried. Last one is operations.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. We had our Operations Committee meeting last Thursday. We started off with a small reception to thank the volunteers that have served, and we have had very good volunteers that show up every meeting and do participate, so we were able to thank them. The first item on our agenda was the MTO, from the MTO regarding the OMCC funding, and there was quite an article in the paper about us receiving the $113,000 and what we were going to use it for, and so there was quite a discussion in the committee that the committee were basically unaware of things such as the service stations along the bike route. So we asked that the staff bring back a report to operations, including the original application that we applied for, and what the options are for using the funding, and that report then will come back to council. We had correspondence with regard to huge vehicles parking on the street in front of residents' buildings or residents' homes, and this is becoming a bit more of a problem, so buses and trailers and motorhomes, et cetera. So we have asked staff to bring back a report on off-street parking of large vehicles. I must say that the Board of Education has been receptive of this and has worked cooperatively with us on that particular problem that we have had. We discussed winter maintenance. The county has once again asked the city to do their winter maintenance of their roads within the city, and they do have a number of kilometers. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you how many there are, but you'd be surprised at the number of county kilometers inside the city. Underwater and wastewater, we just had a verbal report on this, but the verbal report was very good news in that the had an audit, the 2017 audit of the water operations. There were no issues found that needed to be addressed, and we got, basically, it was a perfect report, and that's in preparation for the external audit that will take place in January. So commend our staff for the wonderful job they're doing out there at the wastewater treatment plant. Of course, they've got a brand new, many multi-million-dollar facility, so it's much easier working when you have a wonderful facility out there that we have. So let me see, under other business, we talked about one interesting, and I don't know whether other committees do this or not, but one of the community members has asked us that when we bring minutes of committees to council, they would like feedback on any changes that are made to that set of minutes. For instance, if an article is pulled out and changed in any way, they would like to have feedback on that, which is a pretty good suggestion. And although we suggested that they could read the council minutes because it would all be in there, they still would like that to come back. So we think that that's a pretty good suggestion, and we would do that. And that basically is my minutes, and I will move receipt of those minutes.
Approval? Yeah. All in favor?
Move approval, sorry.
Sorry, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Minutes of closed meetings, 11D.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself that the minutes from the council closed session meeting held on November 20th, 2017, and the minutes of the Community Services Committee closed session meeting held on December 13 as printed be adopted.
All in favor? That's carried.
Moved by myself, that the minutes of the Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation closed session meeting held on September 20th and October 17, 2017, and the minutes from the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Board of Management closed session meeting held on October 23rd as printed be adopted.
And all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Number 12 is other business. I'm going to start with Ms. Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I apologize for this late report. Basically, in order to amend our banking agreement, we do require a resolution from Council. This relates to our revolving line of credit. Council may recall early in 2016, we did receive an increase to our line of credit from 15 to 20 million, and that was tied to the unfinanced portion of the wastewater treatment plant. So there is some timing differences between when we expend capital dollars and when we receive funding, both through grants as well as ultimately through the debenture process. There's a significant amount of money outstanding related to the grants and the holdbacks associated with them. So there's about $3 million that's currently with the feds in the province, and not knowing with certainty when those will come, this is a sort of safety measure to ensure that we do have sufficient cash resources in place until we receive that money. So we are asking to increase our revolving line of credit back from 10 million up to 15 million once again.
Thank you. Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Your Worship, and move that recommendation.
All in favor? That is carried. Next, Ms. Bloomfield.
Through Your Worship, now that the snow is here, I just wanted to remind downtown property owners that snow and ice needs to be removed from the sidewalk by 9 a.m.
Good, thank you. Is that something that's discussed at DIA?
A little more than that. There's been a lot of complaints the last little bit. I think probably why Brianna's talking about it tonight, but it's, everyone needs to be reminded, I guess, early on, and hopefully it'll get straightened around.
Good, thank you, thank you. Ms. Coulter?
Thank you, Worship. Just something for our residents to look forward to early in 2018. We have the 2018 calendar. There's lots of great pictures full of information and important dates, so look for this to be delivered to your homes early in January.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Kepke?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was pleased to attend the Getting Ahead graduation ceremony for yourself last week, and we're always proud of these individuals as they move themselves to a better place in their life and their society. It's a program that's combined with the Adult Learning Center as well as Grey County Social Services, so it's certainly a great program. This was the 28th graduation ceremony they had, and they're looking forward to more.
Good. Thank you. Councillor O'Leary?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick update on the City Hall renovations. Committee and council has received regular updates from staff and been on site twice for tours with staff, architect, and the general contractor. Even with winter weather here, work continues and there's plenty of activity at the site. Highlights of the past few weeks include elevator pit foundation and shaft foundation walls. East and west additional structural steel has been installed. Electrical, mechanical, plumbing work is ongoing. Concrete cutting of windows and doors complete. Soffit abatement at east and west additions are complete. Union gas service to the building and Hydro One site servicing. It's important for people to realize that even if there is a perception of little progress on the exterior, there is lots of activity occurring on the interior. These are successes or milestones that are completed each week that might not be significant to the public, as they are not a building finish or something that is even seen when the project is complete. But each week there is progress and small wins that the project teams celebrate. There have been delays, and I'm sure there'll be future hurdles that the project team will be faced with. But it is important for council and the public to trust that the project quality will not be compromised, that the project is currently on budget and the team is working with the general contractor to stay on the revised project schedule. Thank you, Your Worship.
That's one. You had two? Or did you get both? Okay, good, thanks. Councillor Lemon, you've got two items?
Yes, Your Worship. One of the comments that people talk about communities is very important, and that's community involvement. And I find it really interesting, the success at Christmas time of the Bells of Christmas here at the Bay Shore. They were all picked up for donations to people. The Legion, I think, with 67 vets, received packages, and at the bingo, the Tuesday night bingos, they're taking donations for the food bank, and that's averaging about $150 plus a week. And that's really wonderful to see people giving to other people, and it certainly makes me very proud to be a resident of Owen Sound, and an indication of people's feelings about their community. And with that note, my second item is Merry Christmas to all.
Good, thank you.
And to all a good night.
Still got a couple hours to go here. I think I'm left. So each year I try and do a year-end report, and I was telling the writer in the group that we started off at about 2,300 words, got it down to about 1,500, and back up to 1,800 as I've added things. So I'll try and go through it pretty quickly. 2017 has obviously been another blur. We've had some accomplishments that I'll cover, but not in any order. First of all, we had a lot of fun this summer, especially celebrating our nation's 150th anniversary and our city's 160th with the Mawinjinga. Oh, I had it. Mawinjading. I've practiced and practiced and practiced those words, and as soon as I have a microphone in front of me, I mess them up, and it's frustrating. After a lot of criticism across the province, we ended up with this really neat thing called a big rubber duck that came to town and drew so many tourists. It was amazing. I just got a picture here. We had a great fun day going up the river and up the river with a paddle. A couple of days after that, we celebrated the relighting of the ghost ship, the Manitoba, on the East Harbour Wall after a number of years. Celebrated the 100th anniversary of Air Marshal Bishop receiving his Victoria Cross for bravery in the air over France. We had his medals on display at the museum, which is pretty rare. We were honored to have the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, Her Honour, the Honourable Elizabeth Dowdesdale, attend, and unveiled the planting of an oak tree that came from an acorn at Vimy Ridge. We celebrated the life of Tom Thompson and the 100th anniversary of his drowning on Canoe Lake. Clearly, we've had some negatives in the last little while, but I think there's an awful lot to acknowledge the accomplishments that the art galleries had too. They had big year coordinating with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation and other parts of the province to celebrate the life of Tom Thompson. There was other galleries that did things in cooperation. For the first time ever, we had the land surrender treaty that was signed by representatives of Queen Victoria and the Chippewas of Nawash 150 years ago. It was the first time it's been back, and it was pretty special. It was on display at the gallery. There was the Betwixt and Between that was a pretty special display that was on this summer. It will tour to a couple of places after Christmas into 2018. Clearly the iconic West Wind, which is now on display, is another big accomplishment for the art gallery. It's only the fourth time in 100 years that it's been to Owen Sound, so it's nice to have it. Probably most of us won't be around the next time it comes back. We celebrated the 100th anniversary of Tommy Holmes being awarded his Victoria Cross for his bravery 100 years ago in Passchendaele. We've continued to look at ways to manage our costs. In 2016, we started, I guess, a thorough review of the city's services and found significant savings. Part of that was to ask for an OPP costing, which tonight we have come to a conclusion with that. The OPP costing was something that was discussed in our community by a lot of people for a lot of years, and a lot of people wanted it done. We've got it done. We've learned some things. We've now got a comparative baseline that we can use to look at policing, and we look forward to working with the Police Services Board and with the Police Association to find cost savings and move forward as a modern, progressive police service. 2018 budget will see the smallest budget increase in years. Some projects that we completed: wastewater treatment services or treatment plant. No, I'm jumping. First of all, the wastewater services were installed in Sydenham Heights development area, and we can look forward to the development of these lands starting in the spring of 2018. The wastewater treatment plant upgrade is completed, and it has exceeded our expectations in efficiencies. This will enhance our bay and our environment. Big thank you to Order of Good Cheer for the new accessible washroom opening in Kelso Beach. A couple of other issues that have lingered without resolution over the past number of years. One is the flag policy, and the other one is, another word I'm not even going to try, the not-aware policy here in our major facilities.
Anaphylaxis.
Thank you. This makes our recreation spaces inclusive to everyone, and it seems like small gestures, but they're pretty important to people that care about it. So it's been a meaningful step that we were able to deal with this year. Some stats, and these are updated, and they might be a little bit different than the ones that Travis had a few minutes ago. But total building permits issued, 292. New dwelling units, 91. That compares to 18 last year. Construction values in total, $44,860,000. 9 site plans have been approved, 4 zoning bylaw amendments, 1 official plan amendment for Southbridge, The RCA subdivision received draft plan for subdivision. That's the largest in the city with, so far, Red Hawk is nearing completion, and it will represent 650 dwelling units up by the hospital. We've had preliminary consultation, or staff has, of 11 new projects. Some of those, the formal applications I've already covered, but there's still more to come. And we look forward to seeing the results in 2018. There's 26 new business licenses issued, plus 9 home occupation business license, 4 business ownership changes, and 8 business relocations within our city. The Business Enterprise Center had a great year with 21 workshops, plus summer and starter company programs. In progress and moving forward category, and I'm including Are You Most campaign here, because we're not done. Wildly successful. We got great attention. A lot of people paid attention to Owen Sound, and they like to say put us on the map as a result of this campaign. It was our target to market to millennialpreneurs through digital marketing. We've had, I think, 10 families or couples that have come, individuals or couples that have come to visit that we know of. There are several that came on their own having seen this. We had hoped to have 25 people approach us. We ended up with 75, so that's pretty big. And staff are busy planning the next phase to attract entrepreneurs to provide jobs to our community. Renovation of City Hall in the downtown core continues. It'll be safer, accessible, and functional for the next half century. The deconstruction process is completed. Now we're starting to build it back up. I think we saw some photos the other day that there's drywall up in parts you can't see from outside, so it's progressing quite a bit. We're on budget, and we're catching up time-wise after dealing with the unknown contingencies of asbestos and buried foundation work. Downtown River Precinct plan is moving forward for the beautification around the river from 8th Street to the harbor. The environmental assessment phase was completed in 2017. Economic Development Committee with the DIA and other partners completed the downtown revitalization review to help enhance our downtown. Committee and staff have listened to retailers, building owners, and the public. The plan is in place now. With the DA as a partner, we can move forward to implement it and play that out. Trent Street Bridge rebuild, we met with representatives of the Provincial Ministry of Transportation at AMO to get funds to start the environmental. No, we've got that done. Design work is in progress, and we're probably looking at 2020 realistically. 19 maybe, so it's still another full year away. We supported Georgian College in Grey County with their initiative to install and establish a training, learning, and business enhancement at the former Sydenham School. This is one that we often overlook. The East Hill Pumping Station design is complete and ready for construction. So that's going to, so we've been talking about Sydenham Heights. This is going to allow for further development in the northeast portion of the city around, at and around the RCA property. We've moved to the negotiation phase with Transport Canada to determine if we can or will assume the harbor. This issue is another one that's been kicking around for several years, and we hope to resolve it one way or the other in 2018. Want to take this moment especially to thank Chiefs Nadjuan and Anaquat and their councils of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation for their cooperation in this project. We've met with them several times, and their concern about the environment is our concern about the environment, and we're pretty much, we understand their position and can move forward with them. I think we've improved our consulting and communication with our community this year. Each year we try and do it a little bit better, still work to go. We met and listened to the neighborhood group, and we'll look at their suggestions that they made. We met and consulted with 60-plus people to build our growth plan. We had, as you've mentioned, 509 responses to the Parks and Rec Master Plan, astonishing our expert. We are pleased to support the Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation with their current building phase of 28 new affordable and accessible housing units, and we thank the Grey County for their support as well. CP Station has been renovated over the year, inside and out, and will continue to be so, and we look forward to tasting suds by the side of the harbor in the next year. Next phase of the Kenny Drain System is in progress to control erosion and ease the stress in our water intake after storms. It's quite a list, isn't it? We've seen investment in our city. Chapman House is open, Sun Life Plaza is open, the county building is completed, the second phase will start up there. Construction at Sydenham condos continues. We've seen Giant Tiger, Good Life Fitness, Urban Planet have opened in town. There's construction ongoing in the industrial park. We've had a lot of construction-related jobs, which has helped both the local labor market as well as hotels and restaurants when we have visiting crews come to visit. I think Travis covered it a few minutes ago. This is an indication that developers have confidence in our community to invest. The city's on the right track, and I believe some of the decisions we've made this year and over the last couple of years will continue to build momentum and will have a positive effect in future development. We're working to put together the plan for 30 by 30 long-term goal to try and build the population and the assessment and jobs in our community. In the short term, we'll continue to work with employers to retain employers that are here, to attract new private enterprise jobs and industrial and commercial growth. Just as an update, we're waiting for government approval, of course, of the medical marijuana plant, which is we've been waiting for the couple of years, but it's in the federal government's hands. Southbridge Long-Term Care continues to wait for their approval with the provincial government, and we're looking forward to the commencement of the planned hotel. We hope to see their paperwork soon. Lots done, so much more to do, and a year to do it. Finally, from Mayor, I want to thank my fellow councillors for bringing their unique qualities, skills, and assets to the table. As a whole, I think we're pretty successful, and we couldn't do it individually. Each of you have provided strong leadership moving the city forward, whether it's chairing committees or taking leadership in big projects. Everybody's just grabs something and takes hold of it and moves the city forward, and I thank you. On behalf of council, all of us, we want to thank all the volunteers who sit in our committees and do so much throughout our community, whether it's doing something at the church, minor sports, senior center. There's so many activities that take place because of volunteers. Our volunteers that we see at our committee are so important to us and have great input to what we do and change how we do things when we listen to them on the committees. We certainly appreciate it. Council wants to thank our managers, Wayne Ritchie, senior management team, the ABC team again, Kate Allen, Ken Becking, Pam Coulter, our clerks Brianna and her staff. Curtis, thank you so much for all you do. We see the hours of dedication and the expertise that you provide, the early mornings and the late nights that you're sitting at your desk, and it sets high standards, frankly, for us and keeps us on our toes and working hard, and we feed off of everything that you guys do, and we know the rest of the staff does, so we thank you. Also, of course, a thank you to our staff throughout the city. We see their dedication and skill every day, and we certainly appreciate it. It's an honor for all of us to represent the citizens of this great community. We thank everyone in our city for their support, correspondence, ideas, and suggestions. There's a lot of positive things going on in our community. We look forward to working with our community, and we hope everyone joins us to support us and move forward to celebrate the positives. And let's start to tell the world that this is a great place to live. To all in our community and our neighbors throughout Grey and Bruce, Merry Christmas. We wish happy holidays to our friends from different cultures with different beliefs and traditions and celebrations. We hope they have a great year in 2018 as well. To all, Happy New Year's. Thank you to everyone. Thanks. So I think that covers it. Is it 20 minutes? So number 13 is notice that the committee rise.
Moved by myself that the committee rise and report.
All in favor? That's carried. Resolution.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that the action taken in Committee of the Whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be confirmed by this council.
All in favor? It's carried. No notices of motion, no new business by resolution, bylaws.
Through your worship, the bylaws listed for approval on tonight's agenda include the confirmatory bylaw, a bylaw to provide for an interim levy for the year 2018 for all property classes, a bylaw to execute facade and structural improvements agreement with Billy Bishop Museum for 948 3rd Ave West, a bylaw to execute a street vendor agreement with Meher Hussein respecting the operation of a mobile food business at 114 8th Street East, a bylaw to execute a consent to transfer the municipal access agreement with Bruce Municipal Telephone System to Bruce Telecom Ontario Inc. or Bruce Telecom Kincardine Inc., a bylaw to execute an acknowledgement and direction respecting a transfer easement with Martin and Melody Donald for 3599 28th Ave East, a bylaw to dissolve the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Board of Management, a bylaw to execute the acknowledgement and directions for an easement with Barry's Construction, a bylaw to execute a winter maintenance agreement with Grey County for the 2017 to 2020 winter seasons, a bylaw to execute an indemnity agreement respecting weather forecasting for the 2017-2018 winter maintenance season, and a bylaw to dedicate and establish lands known as Part 1, Plan 16R 10855 as a public highway for road widening purposes.
Thanks.
So, Your Worship, for the last time in 2017, barring any special meetings that may be called, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, the bylaw numbers 2017-178, 179, 180, 181, 182, 183, 184, 185, 186, 187, and 188 be passed and enacted.
Thanks. All in favor? That is carried. So that completes the business for the year. Thanks to everyone for tonight and for the whole year. Happy New Year's to everyone, and Merry Christmas.